Yeah, we'll take up some questions which we couldn't take up in the morning session.
Yes, Kishore.
If somebody has any question to ask, he can ask. Otherwise, Navinji will read the morning questions, whichever we couldn't take up. So maybe we'll take up those questions first, and then you can ask your questions. Yeah.
Krishnaji, in day 2 video, Krishnaji says, "Shall we go into this together?" It seems that he was emphasizing on the together part.
Yes.
Can you please help understand what he meant by that?
Yes. Because say if he says walk together, right? So if it is a physical action together, like say walking together, then as he is walking, you have to also walk, right? But if you are not walking, then you are not walking together. And if you expect him to carry you also as he walks, then again you are not walking together. Now, if you consider the inquiry, and he is asking you, can we inquire together? Can we go into this together, right? So which means that he is expecting you also to inquire. And he is inquiring, you are inquiring, then both of you are inquiring together. But what usually we do is that we let him inquire, and we are simply waiting for him to say something about it or to answer that question. We ourselves are not doing our part of trying to find out what could be the answer for that question. So when a question is raised, we are simply waiting for Krishnaji to answer it, and then we either agree or disagree with that answer. So in that case, we are not inquiring together, we are not investigating together, because he is doing all the work and we are just waiting to get the results of his work. So it is not inquiring together. So when he says that can we go into this together, which means that you are also putting as much of your energy, your interest and your work to find out what could be the answer for that question. And he is also doing his part. Now it doesn't matter whether you are able to find the answer or not, but you are putting all your resources to find out what could be the answer. And if you are doing that, then you are inquiring together. Then if Krishnaji points out something that will have a different impact on you, then it will not be mere agreement or disagreement, but it will be as much a discovery to you as it is to him, because you are also doing your work, you are also putting a lot of your energy, you are also putting a lot of your efforts to understand something, and you are still unable to understand it, right? But you are very keen to understand it, and in such a state of mind, suddenly when you do see the answer, right, then that answer has a different impact on you than if you are merely passively listening and just waiting for Krishnaji to answer. Because if you are just passively receiving Krishnaji's answer ready-made, then that answer will not have any impact on you. You will merely agree or disagree with it, and you won't understand it to that depth, which otherwise you would have understood if you had put your efforts also in that inquiry. So therefore, he is always emphasizing this togetherness. And he's saying that together, so can we walk together, which means that you are not walking behind him or you are not walking ahead of him, but you are walking with him. So together you are walking. So in the same way, together we are inquiring. So you will find that many times when Krishnaji is exploring certain issues or certain questions, in between, many times he keeps on reminding his audience by saying that, I hope you are working equally hard as the speaker is. Or when he raises the question, then he also reminds the audience that don't wait for the speaker to answer it. You try to find out. So during his discourses, he is always reminding the audience that they should also do their part of the work so that they are able to share the discovery or the findings. And if they don't do their part of the work, then they have nothing to share. They can only receive. But that reception is also merely at the intellectual level, with which either they agree or disagree. So it only produces one more content in their consciousness. So I hope I have answered that question.
Thank you, Kishorji. But I mean, just a follow-up question on that. Krishnaji will be he's at a level of consciousness, and then the way he actually would communicate,
Yeah.
most of the time would actually go in listening to that. How would
Yeah.
you get into the same space of that? It's more a monologue rather than a discussion, right? So how do
No, you can intently listen to what he is saying. That means there has to be energy in your listening. That means you are paying your complete attention to what he is saying. That is what is required. But usually I find that people are casually listening. They are not listening that intently. And therefore many times they miss also what he has said. And then again, when they become attentive, they realize that they have missed something. But then they can't ask him to repeat because he will never repeat. So what is expected is that to listen to him with full attention, because only that can have a different impact. But usually people are casually listening, and while listening, the general attitude is that it is good if I understand, but if I don't understand, that is also okay. Some other day I will understand, or at some other time I will try to understand it, or I will come back to it later on. And so that way they postpone the action which they are supposed to do right at that moment. So many times Krishnaji also reminds that, sir, see it now, understand it now, not after going home. So that reminder also many times he gives, because that is a dynamic situation. There is the energy of Krishnaji available because he is also inquiring. And even with that energy, if you are unable to understand, how can you understand without any energy on your own? It's very unlikely. And this has been experienced actually by many people, including me. That when Krishnaji is saying something, everything is so clear, everything is so obvious, and you feel that, yes, you have to just go a little bit further and you will have grasped it. And only that little bit has to be done. But then you postpone that little bit. You say that, no, first let me listen completely to whatever he has to say, and then that little bit I will do it afterwards, after I have listened to him completely. And therefore you don't do that little bit. And when after the talk and all those things, when you try to come back to it, you find that not only you are unable to do that little bit, but whatever all that you had been able to follow, even that is lost. And then you have to begin all over again from the scratch, and then the opportunity is lost. So that is why he is emphasizing so much on togetherness. So when he is saying something, And if you are intently listening, you are also inquiring, you are also putting all your resources, then it has a different kind of impact. And that then creates the possibility of you grasping what he is trying to convey.
And something non-verbal as well? Not
Yes,
just...
non-verbal also, yes. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
I wonder if you can throw some light on importance of self-understanding and self-knowledge as gleaned from case teaching.
Oh. See, when you live your life and things don't go as per your wishes, and howsoever you may be planning and doing things, and yet they don't go the way you would have liked them to go. And then you are interested in finding out why is it happening like that, right? So how one will go about it, right? Now here, so far we were thinking that only the outer circumstances are responsible for our actions and their consequences. And therefore, if we want a particular consequence or a particular result, then all that we have to do is control the outer factors. And by controlling the outer factors, we will be able to get the required result. And that seemed to work in the technological field. It works very well in technological field. But when it comes to the psychological field or the field of human relationship and a field of human psychological reactions, right, it doesn't seem to work. Because there, the consequences are not just because of the outer situation, but there is your own contribution to that outer situation. Because each person has his own psychological content. So that psychological content reacting to the external circumstances is creating the event. So there is always a component from your side in any psychological event, right? And if that component which is from your side, you are not aware of, you don't know anything about it, then naturally, what will be the result of that psychological event? You won't be able to know, you won't be able to predict. You may try to plan that psychological event based strictly on the outer circumstances, completely ignoring your inner contribution to that event. And you will definitely fail in that because the event is the result of both these factors, and one factor you are completely ignoring, right? And therefore, if you want to understand the psychological event completely, and thereby if you want to be able to create the consequences as per your wishes, then you have to also understand the component which is your contribution to the event. That means your psychological component. And your psychological component is nothing but your psychological makeup. And so if you want to understand that psychological component, you have to understand your psychological makeup, which means that you have to understand yourself. So without understanding yourself, you won't be able to understand the psychological events that are happening in your life. And therefore, you won't be able to respond to them adequately. So what will happen is that you will go on living as per whatever the circumstances. You will go on creating the consequences, and then you will go on suffering through those consequences without knowing what to do. You will be completely lost in that. Then you may blame your destiny, then you may blame your karma, or you may blame anything. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't free you from your sorrow or from whatever results you are going through. So therefore, understanding yourself is very, very important. And without understanding yourself, you cannot understand all those psychological events that are happening around you. That is the importance of that.
K's relationship and association with Nandini Mehta and Pupul Jaykar respectively was also an important part of his life. So that was one of the questions for.
No, that is just a comment.
Yes, yes. So, but somebody asked to raise that. So that is what specifically asked.
I would reverse the question.
Right.
I would say that Krishnamurti was the important part of the lives of those two ladies, Pupul Jaykar and Nandini Mehta. So I won't say that they were an important part of Krishnaji's life, but rather it is the reverse. Krishnaji was the important part of their lives. So that is my comment about it.
Right. Yes.
Sir, here we are discussing Krishnaji's life, no, not theirs.
Yes.
That's
So
why the
what
question is put that way. The comment.
No. I mean, I'm failing to understand what exactly you want to convey.
Nothing. It was just a comment. See, yesterday
Okay.
they touched Rosalind, but but this lady, Nandini Mehta, did not figure anywhere. She was an important part of his. I mean, you put it anyway, right? Of that life, and her name had not come. That's why I put it.
Yeah. No. Even Rosalind was not an important part of his life. She happened to be there because then, during the third phase of the process, Rosalind was not even allowed to be anywhere near him.
That's okay, sir.
No. So what
See,
I'm trying to
we
say
are
is that.
discussing everything about his life, no?
Yeah.
That
We
is
are
why
discussing
I
everything
commented.
about his life. So we should not say that, okay, this was a very important part of his life, or this person was very important in his life. There was nothing important as far as he was concerned. He was just going about
In
his
the sense,
work.
Pupul Jaykar used to be constantly with him, sir.
No, yeah, she used to be with him because she wanted to be with him.
Yes. Now, in fact, when I had gone for
And
a lecture,
and not because he wanted to be with her.
no, he did not want. I tell you what happened.
Yeah.
I had gone for a lecture
Yes.
at the JJ School of Arts, and after the meeting, no, we all who were sitting in front went towards Krishnamurti, and Pupul Jaykar, tried to drive us away. She said, "Don't bother him." He said, Krishna said, "Let them come. You are bothering me. They are not bothering."
No, that's what I'm saying. That as far as Krishna is concerned, I don't think there was any important person in his life.
No, nobody.
Only
Not from a psychological point of view, but they used to be with him.
Yeah. Only the work which he was supposed to do, only that was important for him, and everything was arranged according to that.
So all these people helped. Even Rajagopal, maybe he became bitter afterwards, but he has done a good job.
Of course, he has done a good job. That we cannot deny. Whosoever has done whatever his contribution, that cannot be ignored or denied, right? So, but we can only say with little pity or sadness that in spite of all these things, finally he had to become like that. But then that is also okay, because what we can say is that maybe he was not grown enough, and before he was grown enough, this kind of responsibility came upon him. And he tried to fulfill it as much as possible. But then if he failed in certain respect at certain point of time, I mean, we have to take that failure also in stride and say that, well, he did his best in spite of not being ready for it as yet.
So he was a married man with family, no? So certain constraints do come upon a man with a family.
No, he got
And
married
I
much
think-
later on. He was not married initially, in the sense that because of his association with Rosalind, and that too also because actually Rosalind had very close, warm feelings towards Nitya. And Nitya's death was as much shock to her as it was to K. And then, in the absence of Nitya, Rajagopal slipped into his shoes. And
Acha.
because of their close association, then later on they got married. But then Rajagopal was not that much interested in Rosalind. I mean, the initial attraction was there. Because Rajagopal married thrice.
Acha.
He divorced Rosalind, then he married again with another lady, and then he divorced again or whatever happened, and he married third time. And his third wife was a devotee of Satya Sai Baba.
So Satya Sai Baba was against Krishnamurti.
So all those things are there, you see. Therefore, what we are saying is, well, Rajagopal did his part, but then at certain point of time, he failed.
Yeah. So commentaries on living is a masterpiece, sir. No doubt about
Yeah,
it.
of course. It is the best edited book of Krishnaji. All the 3 volumes.
Yes.
He was a very good editor, Rajagopal.
I admire him for it, whatever his other faults.
Yes. We should always pick up the good from the other person and just ignore the other things. They are not worth to even think of.
Kishorji, can I ask you a question? Kishorji.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Kishorji, it's known fact that Krishnamurti spoke to the maximum number of people in the world.
Yeah.
All over in his 50 years, 60 years.
Yeah.
And the fact that the maximum discussions, even today, around the world, is around Krishnamurti's teachings. But yet, Krishnamurti's teachings are least understood compared to the other world teachers or the saints. Why is this so?
So I doubt whether the teachings of the other teachers are understood. I doubt that. Because when somebody says that he understands Buddhism, mostly he understands it intellectually, but doesn't have much impact on his life. It doesn't show through his actions. Somebody does Vipassana or something like that, well, he may feel good for a certain period of time. But then when it comes to his daily life, right, we don't see much change there because he still continues to react psychologically. He still continues to behave in a self-centered way and so on. So I very much doubt whether the people have understood the teachings of other people also. So what we can say is that, well, a lot of people seem to have accepted the teachings of other teachers. And they say that, yes, we follow them or we go with them and so on. But actually, they neither follow nor go with them. But they have accepted it and they expressed their acceptance. But then with Krishnaji, they are not able to accept because even intellectually they are unable to follow it. And what Krishnaji expects them to do, they are unable to do it. And therefore, naturally, they don't show any acceptance towards Krishnaji's teaching. They may show some interest initially. And when they find that they are not able to make any head or tail out of it, then slowly they lose their interest. And then they say that, well, maybe it's not meant for me, or it's meant for highly intellectual people. And therefore they distance themselves from that, or they get involved into something else. So I know people who have spent 30 years, 40 years in trying to understand Krishnaji. And at the end of 40 years, now they no longer read Krishnamurti, but they try to read from the other gurus, what they are saying, what are the other books, then who is saying what, and then they kind of suggestions they come from them to me. Then they recommend that, have you read this person? He writes very well. So I will send you his book, and so on. So this is very strange. And this is mainly because people somehow are unable to understand what is the practical side of Krishnaji's teaching. They only go with the intellectual side. So Krishnaji talks about observing without the observer, or Krishnaji talks about art of listening, or art of observation, or art of learning. Krishnaji talks about psychological conditioning and so on. Now, when he talks about observation, has anybody actually tried to observe? When he says that, can you look at that tree, observe that tree? Now, has anybody actually observed the tree and found out what is happening? Whether he is able to observe the tree or not able to observe the tree, or when he starts observing the tree, what actually is happening in his mind. So those are the practical things which people are completely missing. They are not even aware of it, that they are supposed to do those things actually. So when it comes to listening, then he is suggesting that, can you give complete listening to the other person? Now, they will only answer that question intellectually. But when it comes to actual listening, they are unable to give complete listening to that. I mean, even the example of their own child trying to tell them something. So even to that, they are unable to give complete listening. Even before the child has completed what he wants to say, they already start reacting to it. So they are not giving complete listening. And then how can they expect that things will happen according to what Krishnaji has said? They will never happen. Then Krishnaji says that your psychological reactions, you have to just observe without trying to do anything about them. And these people, they keep on observing those psychological reactions as if they have nothing to do with them. And they keep on observing it for 30 years, 40 years, and nothing happens. And then they say that, well, Krishnaji has asked us just to observe, and I have been observing. But even after 30 years of observation, I still keep on getting angry, I still feel afraid, I still undergo all those psychological reactions. No change seems to have come. Right? But then, when Krishnaji is asking you to observe, he is asking you to observe with all your energy, with all your attention, with all your resources, right? With all your senses. Now, nobody is even bothered to find out whether one is able to observe like that. And therefore, you don't see any result of whatever you are trying to do in order to understand things in the Krishnamurti way. Because you are missing the major part of it. So I think that is the difficulty. And then people keep on complaining that Krishnaji is very impractical. He talks only
So
about
that
theory.
is the reason he didn't get the Nobel Prize.
Yes. So that again is, it shows how people have misunderstood what Krishnaji is talking about. So actually Krishnaji's teaching is meaningful only in a practical way. Because unless you actually observe, you won't be able to understand what is the effect of that observation, how the observation itself changes the observed. That you won't be able to understand unless you actually observe like that. But people don't observe like that, and they don't see any result. And then they complain that maybe it is just intellectual, maybe it is not meant for me. So what is expected is quite hard work. One has to work upon oneself. And people are usually reluctant to do the hard work.
That is the core of it, actually.
Yes. They want the easy way out. And since there is no easy way out, they probably just distance themselves from case teaching. Yes.
Sir,
Yes,
can
sir.
you
Thank you.
expand a little more on that?
Little more
Sir,
on
this
what?
is Subhash. On the observation.
Yeah, yeah.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are audible, Subhash. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir. So when you start observing, you also observe all the reactions that are coming,
Yes, yes.
and you are seeing that it's not one reaction that you can pay attention to or be aware of, and your awareness kind of, it's a multiple fragments of many things.
Yeah.
So at some
No,
point you
actually, you see, actually, say you are observing, say one reaction is arising in you, and you are observing that reaction, or you are paying attention to that reaction. And as you are observing that reaction, another reaction arises. Now, if you say that you want to observe the first reaction first and the second reaction afterwards, right? And therefore, you try to put aside that second reaction and you want to remain focused on the first reaction. Then Krishnaji says, then it is no longer attention. Then
I
it
understand
becomes,
that, sir.
yeah, it becomes concentration, right?
Yes.
So that is one aspect of it. The second aspect is that, say the second reaction has arisen. So you say that, well, now the second reaction arises, so you pay attention to the second reaction. And then the third reaction arises, you pay attention to the third reaction. And then the fourth arises. So which means that you are unable to pay attention to any reaction sufficiently. You are simply moving from one reaction to another reaction to another reaction to another reaction. So which
Yes,
means
that
that,
also you are noticing, sir.
yeah, the whole activity, then the whole activity of paying attention is completely scattered. It is no longer focused, and therefore it lacks energy. Right? So even that situation is not the right kind of situation. It is not the attention. Right? So what is attention is, while paying attention to the first reaction and the second reaction arises, then you are not diverting your attention from the first to the second, but you are including the second reaction also in your span of attention. And so now you are paying attention to both the first reaction and the second reaction also. And then there may be even many more reactions, but then all those are getting included in your span of attention. So you are not missing anything. So attention is still focused. There is no choice made as to which reaction you want to pay attention to. And there is no distraction at all. So that is actually the quality of attention. That is the real nature of attention. And if one is able to pay that kind of attention, then one can find that, yes, then things, they appear different because then a lot of the details of those things, they get revealed.
Yes, sir.
So in that sense, would you say that
Yeah.
attention includes everything? So even if the first
Yes.
reaction has come,
Yes.
the second comes in, it doesn't
Yes.
exclude the first.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So attention is all inclusive. That is what we are saying. While concentration is exclusive. In concentration, only one is allowed, all the rest is excluded. And so moment there is a choice in your attention, then it is no longer attention, it becomes concentration.
Hello. Good evening, Kishorji.
Yeah.
Durga here, sir.
Yeah.
Regarding this topic, I just would like to add one or two points, sir. May I?
Yeah. Sure.
Yes, sir. So regarding this issue of, why K teaching looks so tough and why people go away and all that, sir.
Yeah.
I feel unless and until some kind of a connection that is made with what one is reading, from the Krishnamurti books, some kind of a resonance they don't get from the books. So I feel the journey is not that easy. one has something in them, and they feel they got connected with whatever that has been read, in the books. So I feel that's how it begins. And secondly, like one has to take a little pause in their like day-to-day activities of life. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like, one of those things, you can't continue with your day-to-day activities and you read Krishnamurti and you say I feel it demands that, to take a
Yeah.
little pause from your day-to-day activities and ponder over, reflect over, unless and until that work has not started in oneself. But
Yeah.
just reading the Krishnamurti and saying that, these are not understandable. It is not like one of those, run-of-the-mill kind of a stuff. It is so
Yeah.
different, so new, unless one also start giving their time, their passion, their energy to this. So
Yeah.
nothing is going to be registered, sir.
Yeah.
That
That's
is
right.
what I'd like to
Yeah.
say. And one more thing, sir, like maybe at some time K himself said 5,000-year-old conditioning, it is not easy to be out of it. So maybe
Yeah.
little bit of discussions, all these intellectualization, maybe a little bit goes and levels of consciousness, human consciousness may start
Yeah.
rising or something get registered. I feel, that's how I see the whole, the
Yeah.
teaching,
Yeah.
teaching the humanities, sir.
That's right.
So that's what I would like to say.
Only about the first point which we have made, I would like to say that even going or reading the book can also resonate with what
Yes.
K is trying to convey. And if it doesn't, then I'm afraid the person doesn't know even how to read.
Yeah,
So many people, they just don't know how to read a book, and therefore they are not able to grasp the whole content. But then if they know how to read a book, then it is possible that they can resonate with the consciousness of the author and grasp what exactly he is trying to convey.
and he
So
says
from the book
after some
also, it
time
is
it
possible
is book
to
of one.
get the same understanding as one can get by directly listening to K.
And after a certain point, it is
Sir,
not even case matter. It is one's own book of life, like one needs to
Yeah,
read.
that's right. That's right.
Yes, sir. That's all, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, sir, awareness may include all reactions, full attention, awareness. Is it okay?
See, no, awareness. See, awareness doesn't include anything. Awareness is a quality of mind. It's a state, and that state is not towards particular content. Awareness can be of anything. So you cannot say that awareness can be only of these things and awareness cannot be of other things. So there can be awareness about anything or awareness of anything. Second point is that the awareness is not dependent on what it is aware of. That means awareness doesn't need anything to be aware of. There can be awareness without there being anything to be aware of. So it's a altogether different state. The awareness can be without the content. The awareness doesn't need any content, while consciousness does need a content.
Sir, 40 years ago, when I first read Freedom from the Known, I didn't understand anything. I had to read it at least 5 times before I began to understand it.
Yes, yes, that is true.
I'll admit this.
Yeah, no, the very first impact, you are completely lost. Although as you are reading, you think that you are following it, but when you have finished reading and if you ask yourself what you have read, you are unable to recall anything. So you
I
have to
only
read
understood
again.
one thing. Yes, he's saying something important, but I'm
Yes.
not able to grasp it. So I have to read it again. So I read it
Yes,
again. So I read it again.
That's it. No, that happens. Yes, that happens because our brain is not yet capable of following what he's trying to say in the first attempt.
Can I read this question?
Yeah,
also
yeah, please.
feel, sir, that it is like, investigating it together. So he doesn't give you a straightforward answer. He asks
Yes.
you to, go into it layer by layer, then deeper
Yeah,
into
yeah.
deeper. So it's
Yeah.
not easy to, like you ask something and you get an answer. It's never
Yeah,
like
that's right. Yeah, it's never like that. Actually, he wants you to investigate. He wants you to explore. And then he will say that,
Yeah.
okay, I will be also exploring with you.
Yeah,
Right?
and sometimes he
So,
abruptly stops
yeah,
and you are at a loss, like you don't get
yeah,
anything at the end.
yeah. That's right. So there is nothing available straightforward from Krishnaji. And sometimes he did offer the straightforward thing. There is an interesting thing about it that Krishnaji used to address those self-preparation groups. And then Krishnaji always liked to experiment with food and what is suitable, what is not suitable, what to eat, what not to eat, and all those kinds of things. He experimented quite a lot with that. And out of that experimentation, he came out with certain results. And he thought that maybe those results may be useful to other people also if they are conveyed to them. So then he made a write-up in which he enlisted 20 points in terms of do's and don'ts with regard to diet. That means what to eat, what not to eat, when not to eat, and quantities and all those things. And so 20 clear-cut instructions in terms of do's and don'ts. So people were very much taken aback. They said, Krishnaji, who never gave any direct answer, now he is prescribing in terms of do's and don'ts, all these things as far as diet is concerned. So they were very happy. And some of them, they started following all those instructions to the letter. And they discovered after some time that some of them, they started suffering because that way of dieting did not suit them. And then they complained to Krishnaji, saying that all those instructions you are given, we followed them to the letter, and we are suffering. He said, you followed the first 19 instructions to the letter, and you completely ignored the last, that is the 20th instruction. And the 20th instruction was, use your common sense. So that instruction, they seem to have completely neglected, and then they just strictly followed the first 19 one. So that is what usually happens when a person of Krishnaji's stature, if he says something or if he tells you to do something, then people simply try to do it blindly without using their common sense, because they have that kind of status of Krishnaji in their mind. And while Krishnaji is all the time saying that, don't accept what I am telling. Use your brain, you find out. And then when you understand, then you'll be able to act according to that. So probably in a way it's good that he is not telling us directly what to do and what not to do, but asking us to use our brains to find out. And then probably that way is the right way of going about.
Sir, I think
And
the common sense
it
gets lost
does.
in all that jargon that he uses.
All the jargon which Krishnaji uses?
Yes, Krishnaji only.
Okay,
See,
okay.
His last words were the most important. He was saying when he gave the final message, he said
Yes.
simply be attentive and aware. That's all. But then observer is the observed and consciousness and this and that. People get lost in that.
No, I think all
He
that
is
becomes
someone who never used any jargon, actually.
yes.
Never used
No,
any scriptural
yeah,
references. This is, I think, I don't know, we are shocked to
yeah.
hear. Sorry to say.
No, it is anti-climax. Actually, it becomes jargon because we are not listening to him attentively. We are not
And
following.
then
So if
We all agree
see,
that he is difficult to
no,
understand.
no, sir. See,
And people go to their other
no, sir.
messages.
If we don't understand some word that he is speaking to us, right? Then that word becomes a jargon for us. And therefore, as we are listening to him, and more words we are unable to understand, right? The content behind it, then all those words, they start becoming a jargon. And so finally, a person who doesn't understand or follow any word to its end, for him, the whole talk of Krishnaji becomes a jargon. Because
So if it is not jargon, then every person who says that it is not jargon should have understood very clearly what he is saying.
No, jargon means the words which are not understood. So if the person is speaking to another person and that another person is not able to make any head or tail out of that, then the whole speech of that person becomes a jargon for that person. Jargon means a collection of meaningless words, meaningless
But that is
phrases,
what we
meaningless
just
sentence.
know a few minutes ago. People don't understand and then they go away to other sannyasis and all that.
Sir. No, sir. We are not saying that. We are saying that we are not saying
I'm not
that
talking about myself. I'm not talking about myself.
No. Sir, you cannot talk for others. Let the others talk for themselves. You can talk only for yourself. So if Krishnaji's words are jargon to you, it's okay.
I don't have a problem.
We accept that. If Krishnaji's words are jargon to you, we accept.
No.
We have no objection to it.
No. I don't find them jargon today. At one time I did.
Sir, you have made that statement, so you have to accept the ownership of that statement. You can't.
I made it not in reference to myself. See, one minute, sir, you yourself said that many people don't understand and then they go to other sannyasis. They tell you to read this book and that book. I am talking about.
No, so I have said that statement.
You said it. I didn't say
that because those people, they don't understand. Therefore, whatever Krishnaji speaks is a jargon. I didn't.
Yes, exactly.
I didn't conclude like that. No.
I'm not talking about myself.
No. Because you have used that phrase, right? And because you could think that Krishnaji is using all the jargon, or he's just putting all the jargon, right? The very fact that you could think like that.
Simple. What I said was
you have considered like that. So anyway, we don't have to argue on that point.
The simple message is lost in all the big words.
No, we fully accept, sir, your statement that Krishnaji's words are jargon to you. So we accept that.
Fine. Okay. If that is the way you want it, fine. I will accept that.
So let us now drop that issue here. And
if it makes you happy, fine.
Yeah. Go to the next question. Yes. Yes.
Besides education, was there any other activity like opening an orphanage, old age home, hospital, etc. discussed between K and the trustees?
Yeah, many of the, some of the centers of the foundation, they do have those kinds of activities also. But then those activities were not the essential part of Krishnaji's work. I mean, if people want to do those activities, fine, they can go ahead and do them. But those activities by themselves should not become the focus of that center. The center is mainly meant for the study and the dissemination of the teachings. So that is the basic or primary purpose of any Krishnamurti center. So school are also part of the center because education is one of the major ways of disseminating his teachings. And so in that sense, all the schools are also the centers of Krishnaji's teachings. But then apart from that, the hospitals, the dairy, and all the other activities where some handicrafts are taught and all those things. So that is okay if some people want to do those things or introduce those activities as part of the center's activities. But those activities cannot be the main focus of the center, because tomorrow if somebody says that, okay, let us close down the school, let us close down the study center, and then just continue with this hospital and dairy and the rural center, then that is not allowed, because that is not the primary purpose of these centers. In fact, that is what I think Achyutji, when he was working at Rajghat, he was the secretary of Rajghat Center. I think that was the golden period of Rajghat Education Center. This was 50s. In 1950s, Krishnaji was more focused on Rajghat than Rishi Valley, because for a certain period of that era, Rishi Valley was closed down. And that time Achyut Patwardhan was the secretary. And then when Achyutji suggested a lot of social activity to be introduced, then Krishnaji did not approve of it at all. He said that this place is not meant for such activities. These places are supposed to be the centers of his teachings. From these places, the influence of the teaching should spread. And therefore, I think after that, probably Achyutji gave up the secretaryship of Rajghat Center and he retired, came back to Bangalore and I think stayed there or whatever it is. Then somebody else became the secretary. So all these activities, okay, if you want to introduce them as part of the activities of the center, but they cannot be the major focus or main focus of the center. The teachings have to be the primary focus of all such centers.
In videos with students, Krishnaji seemed more relaxed, and in simple, humorous manner, he would guide them to the truth. I haven't seen this in other videos with older people. Could you please explain this?
Yeah. Actually, Krishnaji was trying to make the students feel relaxed, because students, they have a lot of inhibitions as whenever the interaction with the older ones is concerned. So children don't open up so easily with the older people. The children, they are very free among themselves, among their friends. But when it comes to teachers and parents, they are not that open, they are not that free. So by taking that approach, Krishnaji was actually trying to make those children comfortable so that they open up and are able to discuss freely with Krishnaji without any inhibitions. But with the grown-up people, Krishnaji was similar. I don't think he was, but there he used to be little bit more serious about what he was speaking, and he could take the older people to task if they don't follow something or not understand something. But he can't do the same thing with the children. With children, he has to go with a lot of patience without making them feel any weight of authority of his and so on. So it's a natural response. I mean, I don't think it was anything unusual, because even if we interact with children, so from our interaction also you can make out that when you interact with children, you interact with them differently. And when you interact with other people, grown-up people, you interact differently. So from our own example also, we can say that, yes, we also do the same thing what Krishnaji was doing there. We interact or behave differently with children, and we behave differently with grown-up people.
Sir, Krishnamurti had great healing power. Although
Yes.
he never wanted to publicize this, but he did heal people who requested. Could
Yes.
you share such instances?
Yeah, I think I have mentioned that instance because you can read it in G. Narayan's memoirs, how that lady, she was completely healed. You want me to mention that example here?
Yes,
That is what.
yes, yes.
Okay. So there was some gentleman who used to attend Krishnaji's talks and dialogues at Chennai very regularly. And his wife, she developed some gangrene in her leg. And then it grew to such a level that doctor said that now her leg has to be amputated. Needs to be cut off. Otherwise, the poison will spread in the rest of the body. And then it will be very difficult for her to survive. And so it was almost decided that that amputation will be done. And then just before that, somebody suggested if Krishnaji heals, then why not give it a chance? And why not try it at least? Why not request Krishnaji? And Krishnaji knew that gentleman. So then Krishnaji was asked whether he could try that healing on that lady, on that patient. So Krishnaji said, yes, he doesn't mind. And so they took an appointment. And the next day, the lady was brought to Krishnaji on wheelchair. And then Krishnaji was informed that the patient has been brought. So Krishnaji came out to greet the patient. And as soon as that lady saw Krishnaji, she simply got up from her wheelchair, went towards Krishnaji, fell prostrate at his feet, and then Krishnaji lifted her up, and then he asked the others, where is the patient? So they said, this lady is the patient. So Krishnaji couldn't believe it. He said, are you pulling my leg? They said, no, sir, she is the patient. But then they saw that she was completely all right. There was no illness at all. No gangrene, nothing.
Kishorji, would you tell more about this belief that when you meet a seer like Krishnamurti, it seems that the karma is burnt. Like people say that.
Yes, yeah, no, karma is not burnt.
लोकांचं वगैरे.
No. I think that is a misconception. Karma never burns like that. I mean, people, they think that, or they wish that, yes, if karma burns, how nice it will be, because they will escape the consequences of their misdeeds. But it never happens like that. There is no such arrangement in nature. Whatever are the consequences of somebody's misdeeds, he has to go through all those consequences. He can't escape it. Not even a seer like Krishnamurti can do anything about it. What can happen is that maybe he gets some strength to go through those consequences. Maybe he gets some hints to go through those consequences in such a way that in going through them, he is not generating fresh consequences. So in that way, maybe he is able to exhaust some of the karma, because as that karma is getting worked out, he is able to work it out in such a way that he is not generating any further karma out of that working out. So in that sense, that karma is getting exhausted. Now, if they want to call that as the burning of karma, Well, they can call it as burning of karma, but then it is a misnomer, because the karma is not burnt, karma is worked out, and consequences have been borne, but they have been borne in such a way that no fresh consequences are generated out of it. So in that sense, the karma is finished.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, in the current information age, where
Yes.
children have limited attention span and social media influence, will the
Yes.
coming generation have the patience and will to read and investigate into the teachings?
Of course, they will have. I think once they start realizing the ill effects of their behavior, particularly the technology and gadgets and all those things, getting constantly bombarded with all these kinds of things, right? When they will start realizing the ill effects, when they will be seeing the ill effects of those things on them, then probably they will have to come to Krishnamurti, and they will have to observe themselves and try to find out and so on. So I don't think there is anything to worry about that. The future generations, they will have no choice but to come to Krishnamurti in order to.
Actually, teaching should be introduced from school level.
I don't think we should discuss that here. What should be done or what should not be done, because the discussion will go somewhere else. Here we are trying to understand the significance and the deeper meanings of the teaching, and the actions, what needs to be done and doesn't need to be done. I think that the people who have understood this, they can find out in what way it can be implemented, how, and so on. But I think let us not discuss it here. We are just simply trying to go deeper and trying to understand the deeper significance of these things. Because you see, you can try this experiment. You can go through all kinds of sensations. Right? And to go through that, I mean, one of the ways is that you watch lots of films, lots of movies. So when you watch lots of movies, you are going through all kinds of sensations as you are watching the events shown in the movie. And many of the events you don't agree with, still you keep on watching. And so you are going through lots of such sensations. And watch the effect of those sensations on you. Right? The effect is very, very unpleasant. And then your brain is almost totally scattered. And you feel uncomfortable, you are not at peace, you are not able to pay attention to anything, and you get disinterested in all the activities and so on. Right? And in such a situation, you just pick up any book of Krishnaji and just read it, or you just switch on some video of his and just listen to it, and you will immediately see the change in your mental state. There is some kind of harmonizing effect because of that listening. Because when you listen to the truth, that listening to the truth has its own effect on you. And it is clearly visible. So when the future generation, with all the gadgets and technologies and completely influenced by the onslaught of these things, that means their brains are going to get scattered. And with such brains, I mean, they are bound to feel uncomfortable, and they may try to seek some kind of relief from it. And if they happen to listen to some of Krishnaji's recordings, they will realize what way it impacts them. So I don't think we have to worry about the future generation so much. Probably if we worry about ourselves and find out whether we are able to live the teachings, I think that would be the right action.
I just wanted to ask something just as a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Does one need to be ready, sir, to understand, in the chronological time, if we have to look at it, to understand Krishnaji fully, in terms of getting that level of attention? Does it happen?
Yeah. One has to give time to it. And Krishnaji has also mentioned it in different ways at different times. By saying that, he said that you give 20 years to become a doctor, you give so many years to become an engineer, and you give so many years to learn certain skills. And then such important and deep thing you want to learn just in a minute. How is it possible? I mean, you have to give time to understand that also. So which means that one has to really give one's time, energy in order to understand what he's trying to say and understand actually, which means that then you have to experiment with it. So just listening or reading is not enough. You have to experiment with it and find out how it works in one's life. And then through that, then a person will come to some understanding. So if it takes chronological time, it is okay. We don't have to say that Krishnaji is asking us to understand things instantaneously. There is no such thing as instantaneous understanding. One has to give one's time and energy to understand something, which means that you have to observe. Observe how it works in your life, what happens, and all those things. And through that observation, the understanding unfolds. And that will take its own time. But then when you are doing that, you have no sense of time, in the sense that you are not asking, oh, how long it is going to take? Why am I not understanding immediately? So if a person is concerned with time in that sense while learning, then he is actually not learning. Because if he has deep interest in learning something, then he has no sense of time. Then he has all the time to devote to that learning. But if he is not interested, then he will start measuring time. Or how much more I have to keep on doing it, then I will understand, and so on. It only shows the lack of interest. Because you can observe it. I mean, a person who is very much involved in pleasures. Now, the pursuit of pleasure, he has all the time. There is never a shortage of time for the pursuit of pleasure. And he is willing to do anything to get that pleasure. But when it comes to something else, where he is not that much interested, then it becomes a task, then it becomes a work for him. And then he has to either deliberately do it or he has to force himself to do it. And there again, if there are monetary interests involved, then he doesn't mind forcing him also to do those things. But then that only shows the lack of interest. So therefore, one has to really ask whether one is interested in one's own life, whether one is interested in understanding oneself. And if there is that interest, then there is no factor of time at all under consideration. It may take its own chronological time, but that doesn't matter. The very fact that one is at it is good enough.
Understanding
Sir,
cannot be a
may I ask
final
a question,
thing.
sir?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, yesterday we had a very good discussion about the vacant mind. I
Yeah.
have some doubts about that and also a
Yes.
question.
Yeah.
First, I will put my understanding.
Yeah.
Krishnaji was such a great human being. He was able to do his day-to-day activities, both external and internal, in a state of total attention. And because he is able to give his total attention, there is no residue left. So there is no recording. So the mind is vacant because there is no psychological content recorded in his brain. So is that an pointer to all of us, to lesser mortals like us, that if you conduct our day-to-day operations in a state of total attention, there is a possibility that we will not add to the psychological content of our consciousness.
Yes. You have
And
correctly
also,
put it, sir. Yeah.
yeah, and also, sir, my question is, Krishnaji was born with a vacant mind, and therefore, because of his understanding, his conduct of his affairs in a state of total attention, there is no addition to the content. Anyway, there's nothing there, so there's no addition. But whereas for people like us, we are born with a conditioning, we have a psychological content. Today, if I conduct my affairs with attention, there is a possibility that I may not add to that content, but the content will continue. How
No,
to?
that content will also get worked out, because you see, Mr. Murthy, that content which is usually dormant but gets activated when the situation provokes it, and when it becomes active, then that is the time to work it out. So suppose right now one is not afraid, right? But then a situation arises which provokes the reaction of fear in you. So as the reaction of fear is provoked, then that is the time to observe it, to watch it, and let it work itself out. So if the full attention is paid at that time, then that reaction of fear, it unfolds and ends, gets finished. So when that reaction is finished, which means that the content leading to that reaction is finished. So to that extent, the content has worked itself out. So this way, the accumulated content also is worked out. So not only that the fresh content is produced or not produced, but the accumulated content also, part by part, is also getting worked out. And so the same process is the same.
Sir, my question is somewhat like this. Suppose I have a situation where somebody is abusing me. Somebody calls me an idiot. I listen to that abuse with total attention. So there is no recording. There is no hurt recorded in me because I am listening with attention. Right?
Yes.
But what about the hurts that I have accumulated right from my childhood, which is part of my psychological content? How to get rid of that?
Yeah, that's right. So when those psychological hurts are recalled, or they get recalled due to something or other, right? And therefore they become active in my mind. So that is the time to watch them. That is the time to pay attention to them. And if you are able to pay complete attention to them, then you will find that that also ends. All the psychological content in that is finished. And therefore, those memories, or that memory which has worked itself out, it no longer bothers you. That means you may remember that hurt, but when you remember that hurt, you will not feel hurt, right? Because that psychological factor is gone from it. Otherwise, when the psychological content was there, whenever the memory was recalled, the psychological content was also recalled. And then one also actually felt hurt. The feeling of hurt happened again. But when there is no psychological content, you may remember the event, but that event may not create that feeling of hurt in you when you recall it. And then eventually you may forget the memory of that event also, because it no longer interests you. There is no more any psychological content in it.
Sir, one more question.
Yeah.
We have number of psychological contents like
Yes.
Fear, hatred,
Yes.
envy, jealousy,
Yeah.
hurt, etc.
Yeah.
Does it mean that I have to get rid of these psychological contents one by one?
No, what we are saying is that as and when it comes up, you can end them by paying attention, right? But if you can look at the whole thing, then that whole thing can be ended at one go. But then, are we able to look at the whole thing? Probably we are not, because maybe we don't have that kind of energy yet. We don't have that kind of sensitivity as yet. And therefore, whatever limited sensitivity and energy we have, with that, we are able to pay attention. And so with that kind of attention, whatever is possible to work itself out, right? Only that will get worked out. So it may appear that you are working out things one by one. But good thing is that as you are working out these things, the energy of attention is getting gathered. Because whatever is worked out, the energy invested in that psychological reaction, that becomes the energy of attention. And so you will find that the attention is becoming more and more powerful, more and more effective. And then at some point of time, maybe you will be able to have a much wider view of this psychological content, in which case a larger part of it you will be able to work out. But that is possible only if you are making the utmost use of your resources at whatever stage. So at this moment, whatever are my resources in terms of energy, attention, time, and all that, sensitivity, if I am using them fully, right, then things can get worked out, and then the energy of attention can enhance further. That will also add to the sensitivity, in the sense that the capacity to sense also grows. So I think there is no such thing as if only I had this, I would have done this. There is no place for such thought at all. It is always that whatever you have, if you make full use of it, then your resources get further added to. They are enhanced. But if you don't do any such thing, then whatever one has, that is also lost.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Sir,
Let him ask.
why
I will ask
Krishnamurti
him.
is not popular with the masses?
Yes.
Is it because he talks in English? Or is it because something that like there's no guru in his philosophy? Is it because of that? Why all these foundations have not been able to take his thoughts to the masses, whether in India or in England or USA? This is my thing. And another second is, I request you to publish all your talks on the 3 days workshop in a book form. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, your first question we have already answered.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think somebody raised a point about why case teaching is not that popular compared to the teachings of other teachers. So in answering that question, I think your first question has been already answered. And as for the second question, I think we are going to make the recordings of all our sessions available to our group members. We have this K workshop participants group. So now the recordings of all the workshops will be made available to all the members of the group, irrespective of whether they have attended that workshop or not. So which means that you will get to listen to all the content that
Thank you, sir.
have produced during this series of workshops. And about the book, we can think about it later on. But at least the content you will be able to listen.
Yes.
It will be available.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
For giving me time. Sir, my question.
Yeah, Ramarao, you can go ahead now. Yeah.
My submission is that while we are watching, that attention, that the energy, the attention will burn the psychological content of the memory is stored. Is it correct?
Yeah, I mean, what we are saying that when a psychological reaction is paid attention to, right, then there is a change in the psychological reaction. And the change is that there is no longer that psychological reaction. All the energy of that psychological reaction becomes the energy of attention. And therefore, the psychological reaction simply drops. It unfolds and then just drops.
So here another amendment to this statement.
Yeah.
You see that the memory stored in the brain cell, the neuron, with lot of synapses to connect to the another brain cells. That makes when we stimulate one corner, automatically stimulate all connectivity of that memory.
Yeah.
So is it that attention makes the breakdown that network when that psychological content of that brain cell is lost?
No, the attention is not breaking the brain cells or any such thing. What attention is doing is, attention is simply letting that psychological content to unfold itself. And when it unfolds, the energy which is covered up in that psychological reaction is released. And that energy becomes the energy of attention. Now, what you have said is that the brain cells are interconnected. But not all brain cells are interconnected. In fact, they say that large part of the brain cells still are not connected among themselves. Only some small portion of the brain is connected. And in fact, they say that the more you use your brain, the more connections among the cells they get formed. And so the larger part of the brain becomes active. But there is another significant statement by Krishnaji, which says that if one corner of your mind is in disorder, then your whole mind is in disorder. So which means that if one corner of our brain is in disorder, then it amounts to that the whole brain is in disorder. But then it also works in the reverse way. So if you are able to put order, at least in some part of the brain, then that order helps the other parts of the brain also to be orderly. So it works both the ways. So that's why instead of trying to work out several things, if you are able to work out one thing completely and thoroughly, right, so that there is order with respect to that one thing, then that order helps put the other parts of the brain also in similar order. But if you are not able to put even that one part into some order, then you won't be able to create order in the rest of the brain. So that is what usually happens when you just go on shifting from one reaction to another reaction to another reaction. And then the whole brain is scattered. And then nothing is changed.
My another question is,
yeah,
today morning you mentioned common sense, knowledge, transformation. How these three are get together work?
Common sense, knowledge, and transformation. Yeah, common sense, we can say that it may correspond to wisdom. And knowledge has its own place. In the technological field, knowledge is very important. So knowledge has its place. But then, as far as the psychological transformation is concerned, then knowledge has no role to play in that. You cannot bring about psychological transformation through knowledge. And the real wisdom comes only after psychological transformation. And for observation and for understanding, you do need the common sense. So, which means that in one's inquiry, one has to be reasonable, one has to be rational, one has to be logical, and yet understand the limits of the logic and the rationality. And then observe. Right? And if you are able to take your observation beyond the logical limits, which doesn't mean that you become illogical. It only means that the thought is no longer operating. Because if at all thought operates, it has to operate logically and rationally. And since it has reached its limit, it has simply become inoperative. It is quiet, it is silent, it is not operating. It is capable of functioning, but it is not functioning because it has realized that that is its limit. It can't go beyond that. Now, in such a state, a different kind of understanding happens, which Krishnaji calls as insight. So insight means seeing something wholly, seeing something completely. There is nothing left yet to be seen. And when you see something completely, then there is the complete understanding of that thing. And then it is no longer a problem or an issue. Now, this works in the psychological realm. And only through such kind of observation, the transformation is possible.
With transformation, wisdom comes.
Yeah. So I have answered your question about common sense, about knowledge, and about transformation.
Yeah. Ultimately, that works the common sense with wisdom.
No, common sense is required. Otherwise, your thought won't be able to function logically and rationally.
So it means our
Otherwise,
actions.
one can go very much illogical. And
So
one
it
does
means
go illogical when there is a psychological interference in one's thinking.
it tells me that ultimately our actions depending on our common sense, day-to-day actions.
Yeah, if we let the common sense operate, then yes. But usually we don't let it operate, because usually we are taken over by some psychological reaction or other. And psychological reaction means our likes, dislikes, our preferences, our prejudices, and so on. So these prevent the thought to function logically and rationally. And therefore, our decisions, they go wrong.
Or is common sense within the realm of thought or beyond thought?
Common sense can function in the realm of thought, but it cannot be said as the product of thought. There may be a common sense associated with thought also, in the sense that as the thought functions rationally and logically, and through that kind of functioning, whatever intellectual understanding has been achieved or developed, so that intellectual understanding will have its corresponding common sense. So in that way, thought may have its own common sense also. That has its own place as far as the functioning of thought is concerned. But then there is another common sense which is part of wisdom, and that comes only when this different kind of understanding happens.
So that means there are two types of common sense.
Yeah, just as we say that thought has its own intelligence, body has its own intelligence, and yet there is an intelligence which is quite different, which is the intelligence of love. So we do talk about intelligence in different ways, in different sense. So in the same way, the common sense operates. Common sense which has been developed on the basis of the right functioning of thought in the right way. So that has its own place also. Because in technology, maybe that is also very much required.
Common sense is a function of the intelligence.
Function of the
intelligence.
No, I didn't understand that word. Is the common sense function of
Intelligence.
Intelligence. Yes, we have said that the wisdom, there is a common sense which comes out of wisdom, which is the result of wisdom.
Sir, in that case, wisdom and intelligence both are the same.
Yeah, more or less the same, we can say.
Is right thought necessary to go beyond thought?
Yes, of course. Yes, the thought has to function logically and rationally. In inquiry, in any kind of investigation, the thought has to function logically and rationally and arrive at its limit. That means there could be a situation where thought simply cannot proceed further because it has reached its limit. And it cannot be illogical, because usually people, they become illogical when they find that they cannot pursue something logically. Then instead of staying there, they become illogical. And when they become illogical, then the whole inquiry is finished. Then they will have to start all over again.
Or they have to be a Krishnamurti.
There is a question.
Yeah.
You gave the example of Madam Annie Besant, how our brain had the ability to drop everything and start afresh.
Yes.
Is that a measure of one's progress in the understanding of the teachings? And can we say that the quality of impersonal love reflecting in one's daily life is a measure?
Yeah, I think the question appears to be more of academic nature. Because when we say impersonal love, so is it really love, or maybe it's a feeling of affection, feeling of warmth, and in that feeling there is no personal element, right? But just because it is impersonal, therefore you can label it as love. I don't think that is correct. There can be feelings which have no personal element, right? But those are feelings. Why do we need to call them as love? So being impersonal is not a sufficient condition to label that thing as love. It's not a sufficient condition. Maybe it's a necessary condition, but not sufficient. And then the ability of the brain to drop everything and start afresh. So it amounts to ending all the psychological content.
But the need to drop shows accumulation before that, no?
Pardon? You need to accumulate before dropping. Is that what you are saying?
No. The need to drop itself shows that there has been an accumulation before that, no?
Of course, there is an accumulation. That is why the question of dropping it is arising. If there is no accumulation, what is it that you are going to drop?
Exactly.
And that is what we are saying, that as long as there is the content of consciousness which one has gathered, collected, stored. Now, because of that, the brain is not free. It functions on the basis of that content. And if it has to begin afresh, then it has to drop all that content.
So that means the gathering is causing all the problems.
Yes. So when it drops, right? So usually what will happen, he may drop the old content, but then he will start gathering the new content. Then again he's going to end in the similar situation.
No, but then he won't be able to drop it also if he's going to go on gathering again.
No, he may drop the previously accumulated content, and then he may again start gathering the new content as he interacts more.
No, but don't you think that if he's capable of dropping it, he's also capable of seeing that he does not gather it?
Not necessary, because one may be dropping it simply because one finds that it is no longer of any use to him. It is totally useless, and therefore one may just drop it. But then one may end up in collecting fresh content which one thinks is more useful to him.
So I was referring more to childhood wounds that man was referring to previously.
No, not childhood. We are talking about the grown-up people and their brain.
No. The wounds that have remained from our childhood and which are there to this day. I'm talking about those. After becoming an adult.
Yeah.
So if anybody can drop them, then that means he's fit to see that he does not gather them again. Can I conclude like that?
Yes, in that sense, if he is able to work out those wounds, right, then he is also capable of not letting the new wounds get formed.
That's what I think.
Yeah, in that sense, yes.
Sir, if we live in love and compassion, will it drop automatically?
Yeah, but there is this big if, no? We are asking those qualities in search of which we have been going into this inquiry. And we are saying that if those qualities are there, then all these things will happen automatically. We don't have to do anything about it. Right? So you are right in that way. But do we have those qualities?
Is the love and compassion is coming from other dimensions, sir?
Yes. It's a dimension which is completely different from the dimension of knowledge and thought.
Yeah, I'm very thankful, sir,
Yeah.
for these words.
Namaste, Kishorji.
Yeah.
Sir, can we call it dropping when we drop the psychological content when we don't like it? Is it really amount to the ending of the content? Or
No, it doesn't
it's
amount to
conclusion
ending
of-
of the content. Dropping means
Okay, thank
we
you,
are
sir.
just neglecting it.
Okay, thank you.
Because
Yes, thank you.
the dropping doesn't happen unless it is fully understood.
Okay, thanks.
So it only means that we are just pushing it under the carpet for the time being. We are not interested in it. But it is very much there.
Can we say that all the entities in universe are in orderly state except human race by producing psychological content by thinking? And if so, how did human go into wrong way?
Yeah, I think the human beings, they have this thinking ability, thinking capacity. And nature gave them full freedom to use that capacity in any way they like. But nature has put consequences for every use of that capacity. So what is expected is that the human beings will use their thinking capacity, they will generate consequences, and when they go through those consequences, they will learn what is the right use of this thinking capacity and what is not the right use of thinking capacity. So here the freedom is absolutely necessary. Without freedom, the human beings can't learn. And so when the human beings use this thinking capacity in the field where it was not required to be used, that means when the thought entered the psychological realm, the psychological field, then that was the wrong turn. Then the human being started creating disorder in their lives and disorder around them. So human beings have not yet learned how to use their thinking capacity. And Krishnaji is just started pointing out, and maybe that is just the beginning of learning how to use one's thinking capacity, where it is useful, where it is not useful, and so on. And if it is not used rightly, then what are its consequences, and so on. So I think the human beings will learn, and then when they will be able to use that thinking capacity in a right way, then maybe most of their psychological problems, they will be over.
Sir, if we were to start afresh in our journey of understanding of the teachings, can we say that the starting point is the understanding of awareness and attention?
I want to subscribe to that phrase, understanding of awareness and attention. I don't think there is anything to understand about them. Either one is aware or one is not aware, and that's the end of it. What is there to understand about it? Either one is paying attention or one is not paying attention. So there is nothing to understand about it. So we have to rephrase that statement saying that if we start paying attention to whatever that we are doing, if we are aware of what is happening within us and outside us, then yes, then that can lead to an orderliness within ourselves and around ourselves also, which will then mostly resolve all the human problems, which will help in resolving all the human problems.
Sir, how did the saying empty mind is the devil's workshop become so popular?
Yes, that is true, because you see, you can observe it. When you have nothing particular to think about, then what goes on in your mind? Let's say you are quietly sitting and you are not thinking about any particular thing. You are not required to think about anything particular. And then you observe what's happening in your mind. So you will see that all kinds of thoughts are coming to your mind. And then you never know which thought is going to take your control. Initially, you may see that, yes, all kinds of thoughts are coming to your mind. And you say that, well, I'm looking at them. But then suddenly at certain point of time, certain thought takes hold of you. And then makes you act according to it. Right? And
that means an empty mind is a mind full of useless thoughts, no?
No, sir. Let me complete what I want to say, because
Okay,
otherwise it is creating some diversion, because the point which I am trying to make may be completely missed. So if you will allow me to complete what I want to say. Yeah. So if you observe, say you are sitting, not thinking about anything particular, all kinds of thoughts are coming, and suddenly a thought comes in your mind that maybe you should eat this. Now actually, you are not required to eat it, because you are not hungry or nothing. But simply you remember the taste, that kind of thought comes, and then you feel like eating it. And if it is easily accessible, you simply get up and start eating that. Although you don't require to eat it because you are not yet hungry, but you end up eating. Then suddenly you feel like doing certain activity, and then you start doing it, right? And mostly if there is something exciting which you are used to do, right? Then such thoughts, they take hold of you, and then they make you act according to them. So which means that you just end up in doing things which otherwise you would not have done. And this is mainly because you have let your mind to itself, and you are not attentive to what's happening there. So which means that it's not an empty mind which is devil's house, but it is an inattentive mind which is the devil's workshop. And therefore you will get involved. When, say, for example, a person who is interested in sexual activity, so if he has nothing particular to do, it is quite likely that he will get involved in the sexual thoughts and then may end up in some kind of sexual act, and which otherwise you would not have done it at all. So there can be many more such things. A thought about some other person may arise in your mind, And then when you start thinking about that person, then you remember all the things that have happened between you and that person. And then all that affects you psychologically, because all those memories, they lead you to that psychological state which got created during your interaction with that person. And so suddenly you may feel angry, suddenly you may feel depressed, or you may feel fear, or you may feel jealous, or you may feel hatred for a certain person. So you can see how it becomes the devil's workshop. All the negative things, they take hold of you.
So that means non-productive activity of the mind is an empty mind.
No. It is inattentive mind. I won't call it as empty mind. I think it is a
the phrase is empty mind, but actually it is a mind.
Let the phrase be anything. Let the phrase be anything. We have to understand it in a right way. So we don't want to use the word empty there, because by empty mind we mean something else. So we don't want to mistake it for that. Right?
For us, it means something else. Yes.
Yes. So therefore, we don't use that word empty there for devil's workshop. What we'll say that an inattentive mind is the devil's workshop, because it just lets get itself carried away by whatever that is arising in it, and therefore becomes the devil's workshop, because devil is always on lookout for such inattentive minds to take charge of and make it work for him.
Sir, but may I add?
Hello? Yeah. Go ahead, Neha. Yeah.
No, so that it's precisely in such situations when one doesn't have anything particular to do, that paying attention seems like you're literally, because there's so many thoughts that come charging. Like you may be attentive and you are attending to few of them, and after a while, the moment your attention slacks, then something else takes over. So it is like it's really quite a. It seems quite arduous.
Yeah. So I think there is this art of attention, I would say. So initially, attention means, I think we may be so forceful in paying our attention that it is not able to sustain itself for a longer period of time. It can sustain for a very short time, and then will be followed by inattention. But if we can pay attention, not forcefully or not in a forceful way, but in a way where things are getting noticed. You are not trying to do anything about it. You are not trying to understand them, right? But you are simply taking note of them, and that's it. Just as you sit in the gallery of your house and just watch the traffic on the road. So things are moving. So you are not looking at anything particular, but you are just looking at the whole movement of the traffic. So if you are looking at the whole movement of thought, whatever thoughts that are coming, but not in a forceful way, because usually that is what one needs to learn. And one has to be very, very light-handed in paying attention and not be a heavy-handed. Because heavy-handedness means the very thing you want to pay attention to, it disappears, in the sense that you are pushing it in the background by your very attempt to observe it. You are pushing it in the background. It gets pushed. But if you are able
looking
to
at the traffic, sorry.
Yeah, but if you are observing with light hand, right, then the observed is not disturbed, in the sense that observed is not, it doesn't know that it is being observed.
So it's almost as if one is not even even if, I mean, when attention slips and when one realizes one has, I mean, when one again realizes that one has been inattentive, and then it comes back easily. So it's like you're not concerned really even about paying attention in that sense. It is.
Yeah, I mean, that means you are not worried about paying attention, or you're not worried about becoming inattentive and so on. Because the moment you realize that you are no longer attentive, you start paying attention. That's all.
Yes.
You don't analyze that why you lost your attention and so on.
Yes.
But looking at the traffic and looking at the thought should be simultaneous, no?
Yes, there is a traffic inside of the thoughts and there is a traffic outside of the people and the vehicles. So both are seen. Yes.
So we should be watching both of them.
I think should and should not, these words, I don't think we should use. I think we have to be very tentative about all these things. So we cannot make such definite conclusions. Because then what will happen is that a person will deliberately try to watch both the things. He's looking at the traffic and then he says that, no, I should also look at my thoughts. Then he will start looking at thought and then he will say, no, I have to also look at the traffic.
So, but that is total attention, no?
The whole thing will turn out to be something else. So it's not like that, Vijayji. One has to be very, very tentative, very, very hesitant, very, very careful without coming to any conclusion, because any conclusion means a guideline, a confirmation. Then the action will try to confirm with that conclusion. And then that is not the wisdom, that is not the observation. Then that is the
so if we
activity
learn
of
to
thought.
look at the traffic, we'll automatically will be learn to also observe thought simultaneously.
This is again conclusion, Vijayji. I won't put it that way. I'm only saying that, well, observe and see what happens. That's all. Otherwise, there is no end to it, because one will keep on making such conclusions that if you observe this, then this what happens, or you have to observe this and that, then that happens, and you have to be this or you have to be that. You should do this, you should not do that. Right? Then there is no end to this.
No, don't expect a result from it, but.
No. See, this is again the should. One should not expect result, and one should do this and should not expect result. So still, we are talking in terms of should and should not. So I don't think that is the way the inquiry goes. The inquiry doesn't go in terms of should and should not, but one has to be really hesitant. And if you have taken one line of investigation, then one should go right up to the end of that line of investigation. One should not leave it just because one starts feeling uncomfortable or one stops understanding, and therefore one suddenly shifts to another line of investigation. Then
What will happen when we come to the end of the inquiry?
Yes, when you come to the end of the inquiry, thought will be silent. Now, if I make that statement, then if you conclude that therefore you must continue to inquire till your thought becomes silent, then that becomes something else then. Then it is not inquiry. So I think one has to be very careful, because when we are using words, we should also observe what we are actually trying to convey through those words and what those words mean, and so on. So I think if we try to move with the content which we are observing, then probably this kind of thing will not happen. Then the words, they will become of secondary importance, and the content is the primary thing. And with that content, then we will find out the suitable words to convey that content. And if we find that certain word is not conveying it, we will just drop that word, try to find another word. But if we are moving with the words, then we are caught up in words only. Then there will be like argument whether this word is what it means and what it doesn't mean, and so on.
So continuous action is what we should be doing to the
I
extent
think
possible.
no, I don't think I will respond to that statement because it is again in terms of should and should not. So I don't think I want to respond to that.
Thank you, Kishorji.
Yeah. Rajendraji, please go ahead. Yes.
For giving me the opportunity. I had put up that question regarding an empty mind is a devil's workshop. And you have very beautifully changed the word empty to inattentive mind. So that is so once and for all you have completely transformed the quotation.
Yeah.
Because the word empty was giving a very wrong signal here. And people were thinking that I should be occupied all the time. I should never be empty. So that was pushing people to always be occupied with something or the else. Otherwise, the devil will take over.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So that was a very nice change that you made. Now it's an inattentive mind. Yeah. That's all. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Right.
Another question I have in mind that from the time that we are born and the way we are raised in the society, all the time we are being conditioned. And the more traditional the society is, it seems we want to keep the status quo. We don't want it to change in the name of tradition. In fact, values and various rituals and all are passed on from generation to generation, and we don't want it to be changed.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult thing we are facing now that we need to get rid of.
I think we don't need to change it. All that one needs to do is that one can say that, well, I have nothing to do with it anymore. And therefore, one stops practicing them. And I think that is an enough action at the individual level. And if more people or more individuals do such a thing, then that tradition will come to its own end. It cannot continue. The tradition continues because there are people who are practicing it, who are repeating it. But if nobody practices it, then it is finished. One doesn't have to do anything to end it.
And sir, I think through our education system and everywhere, what we find is that we are trying to condition people. So that is why the critical thinking is missing, sir. We are not able to think for us.
Yeah, that's right.
And that is why you see,
So,
if I can give you an example.
In educational process also, the students are mostly taught what to think, but they are never taught how to think. They are not encouraged to observe. They are never not encouraged to question. They are not encouraged to find out for themselves, but they are simply told. The questions are told, the answers are told, what they are supposed to write, how to pass exam, how to pass the interview. So everything is told. So in a way, they are being programmed in certain way. And therefore, such programmed entities will live a programmed life and will lead to a programmed society.
Yeah, I mean, look at the current COVID situation, you find that we could not follow the protocols that had to be done. We thought it will disappear, go away on its own.
Yeah, the individuals, they didn't follow the proper protocols in the sense that they didn't wear masks, they didn't maintain the social distance, they didn't give up the habits of spitting on the road and so on. So if people haven't changed, then naturally they will have to face the consequences. Yeah, Ramarao?
You see, we are from the birth onwards, we are fully loaded with psychological content.
Yeah.
Yes, this content, this psychological content day to day is continuously adding with that.
Yes.
So when we live without any awareness, without any attention,
yes,
then it is nothing but a living like a just like a mission.
Yes. It is living just like a robot. A psychological robot.
Which have the different functions as a means like a sensation, thought, feeling, and etc.
Yeah. Because you see, because of the association of thought, even our psychological reactions, they get programmed.
Yeah.
So, which is very unfortunate, because the psychological aspect of our existence is the one which is differentiating us from the machines, from the robots. And when that also gets programmed, then we are absolutely like robots. No difference at all.
That is what this society and parents and the schooling, etc., making to
Yes.
perform in specific direction. To preparing is a different type of robots.
Yes.
That's
why Krishnaji, although humorously, but he said that education has become an accepted means of conditioning. Education has become an accepted means of conditioning. That means if you say that I am conditioning the child, parents will rebel. They will say, no, how can you condition our child? But if you say, no, I am educating the child, parents will immediately accept. But under the name of education, you are only conditioning the child. So, therefore, that statement that education has merely become an accepted means of conditioning a child. It has become an accepted means. It is accepted by the parents. If you say to them, I am educating the child, they accept it. But if you say, I am conditioning him, they will not accept. They will revolt against it. Anyway, I think now it's the time to wind up.
Okay.
People are also leaving one by one. I don't see any point in continuing. So this workshop also comes to an end. Right? I wanted to actually talk a little bit about the other point, but I don't think this is the right time and opportunity. Maybe we'll talk at some other time. So
the workshop group.
This is the end of this gathering. We called it as gathering because it was a bit longer than the 2-day workshop. So we say now goodbye for the time being. And if something is planned or gets planned, you will definitely know about it. And then you can participate as per your convenience.
Thank you, Kishorji. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So
thank you,
sir.
This
meeting. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. And
thank you, Kishorji.
Thank you for your
gathering for 3 days.
Yes. The 3 days got over so soon. We don't feel that we spent 3 days together. Yes.
We are feeling just a first day.
Yeah. Let us see whether we can plan a much longer.
Thank you all. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you, Kishore.
The meeting now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.